Good morning, crew. How is everyone doing today?
Hello, everyone. I'm Kurosh with Temple of Geek, and we are here today with a special interview. I'm excited to have this conversation with one of the co-founders of Daruma Games. Please welcome Loren Weng. Loren, thank you for joining us.
Great. Thank you for having me. Very excited
Yeah,
to be here.
yeah. No, we got in touch, and I'm really excited to hear what is Daruma Games, and what game are you here to talk to us today about?
Yeah, it's always funny when people refer to me or us as Daruma Games because Daruma Games really is just mainly two people. It's me and my
Oh.
co-founder Simon. We started this about 2 years ago now in 2023,
Hmm.
and Soulmates is the game that we're working on, and it's the first game that we're working on. And yeah, like it's been a blast so far. Our demo just came out, and we've been seeing people playing it online and having lots of fun with it. So it's all very exciting times.
Interesting. Okay, and so I kind of want to start again back with like you and Simon and your company that you guys run. Can you tell me about like what the origins of that is? With this
Oh,
being its like
absolutely.
debut game, what where does the name come from? What inspired you guys to kind of make this team and kind of go forth? Can you share some ideas and
Yeah.
thoughts there?
I actually pitched this game to Simon about 8 years ago. And I'll talk more about kind of like the origins of the game later. But that was back when we were coworkers. We used to work together for Warner Brothers together in San Francisco, and we worked on stuff like Harry Potter, worked on DC Comics stuff, and after a while, I think both of us kind of got tired of just kind of working under other people's IP.
Hmm.
Like it's amazing to get to work with that stuff, but there's a lot of red tape that comes around when it comes to like the kind of approvals you have to have, and like the kind of scale that everyone's looking for. Like the term $1 billion game was thrown around a lot, and at a certain point it starts kind of clouding your mind about the possibilities of what you're able to make a game out of. And I think hopping into this indie has really kind of been that big reset of like, hey, like we're allowed to chase fun more than we have to chase money again, and that's been really really amazing. um, as for the name itself, it's a little bit of a tough explanation because it's a pun that works on multiple levels, I think, or it's a pun and it's also a wish. So a daruma is this kind of Japanese doll that is kind of like a wish granting kind of ritual that you do, where you write your wish on the back and then you fill in one of the eyeballs, and then once your wish has been fulfilled, you fill in the other eyeball and you bring it back to the temple where you got it from to kind of thank them
Oh.
for the success. So both Simon and I do have a daruma from um, from Japan, and with our little wish on the back. Eyeball's not filled in yet because the game's not out yet, but when we have that done, we'll bring it back. And you'll notice that our studio logo is a winking Daruma
Yeah.
because it's trying to be kind of a little bit vague about whether or not our wish has been fulfilled yet or not. So you don't know what
Ah.
an eyeball looks like.
Okay.
Now, on the pun side of things, a Daruma, when I'm from Taiwan, and when the name is spoken aloud in Mandarin, actually, if you translate it loosely, it could be construed as the undefeatable Wang, like my last name Wang. So like I was like, okay, well that works on that level too. So it was a bolt from the blue, and I was like, yep, I'm taking that as a name.
Yeah, it works on so many different levels. That's amazing. And so, like, with this being the studio that you guys have, and you guys are San Francisco based.
So yes, but Simon did just move to Chicago, so
Oh, okay,
kind of San Francisco based.
got it. But with this being like your studio, you two came together, and this being Soulmates being your debut game, what then sparked that idea for this kind of game to come to fruition for you
So
two?
for
Like,
Soulmates,
where did that conversation go?
So for Soulmates specifically, I think it was a lot of the coming out of the pandemic kind of thing. In 2023, we're kind of like recovering from all that, and everyone's
Hmm.
kind of rediscovering what it's like to have friends again. Because I think a lot of friendships and relationships atrophied over time as you kind of like got lazy and didn't bother to reach out to your friends to be like,
Yeah.
hey, what's going on with you? And like we felt like it was like the right time to kind of like hop onto this couch co-op idea that we had shelved for a long time. I reached out to Simon after the pandemic. It's like, hey, remember that game that we talked about like way back when? The Soulmates didn't have a name back then, but I was like, like I think it's a good time for us to kind of like make that because I'm sure that people will be starving for kind of co-op content, and I think, like ideally the game would have come out by now. It's taking a little longer than we wanted to, but you can see in the big co-op boom right now with all these amazing co-op games. You know, your Peaks, your Repos, your Lethal Companies, and all these games that, like, yes, like we were on the mark. Like everyone wants more co-op because yes, like it's just great to hang out again.
Yeah, no, I definitely can resonate with that. I was just at PAX West up in Seattle, and I know you were showcasing up there as well, correct?
We were showcasing in PAX East, and
PAX East. Okay,
Mhm.
gotcha. But in the PAX circuit, the community that's usually fostered in like the PAX environment for convention space, I often see like interesting ideas or revisiting old ideas or passion. Passion's really the through line that I see with all these. And so kind of like does your passion and your and Simon's passion kind of for co-op games specifically, is that deep rooted, or is that something, as you're saying, kind of that was you're like culminating on like the COVID coming out of quarantine? Does it go deeper or beyond that even?
I think we're both pretty big on co-op games. Like,
Yeah.
if it was between like a co-op game and a competitive game, I think like just affinity wise, we'd definitely be working on a co-op game. When it comes to kind of like the background, I think everyone in games like just plays a lot of stuff. Simon and I, we play lots of co-op games together, both board games and video games. We've also played them with our own groups as well, and so I think it's just kind of our bread and butter. It's kind of so ingrained in our vocabulary. We don't even think about it much when we're thinking game design for this game. We're just like, oh yeah, it's going to be like this because, you know, that's just how games are made.
Yeah, yeah, and that kind of made me think too of like co-op. Typically, over the years, it's kind of evolved and changed because it kind of took a more of a departure away from the couch co-op, as you're kind of saying. Like, there's a nostalgia for it, right? How do you balance like going back for that chase of like that old feeling, but competing or like managing modern expectations of like online play as well? Is that dichotomy of the two something that's been on your guys' mind as you're developing this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there is definitely, especially when it comes to the marketing side, there's trends and fads and whatnot that like have kind of like shifted when it comes to co-op. Like for example, of a lot of the games I mentioned, these kind of like super viral co-op games are proximity chat based first person type games, and
Hmm.
I think they have like an amazing way of just creating these hilarious situations where you hear someone's voice kind of like vanishing off into the distance. And you're like, oh god, what just happened to them? I hope that doesn't happen to me too. And then you fall too, and then you're like, okay, I get what happened to them now. And I think that's like amazing, hilarious experience. But like, like I think that comes at a trade off where the trade off is immediately that if you're together at someone's place and you want to play this game together, you can't because like nobody brought four laptops so you can play these like online co-op experiences together. And so like I still feel like there's a very strong need for there to be couch co-op games where like you get together with your friends and you can play together on one screen together on your couch. And so like that's kind of really driven a lot of the design decisions behind our game, where we have like this big shared camera. You can always see what everyone else is doing, so that even if you're playing online, you're going to see like the same perspective as if you're playing on a couch together. You can really feel that like togetherness.
Yeah, yeah. And you're talking about like that couch co-op feeling. Do you have a definitive like experience or moment in your past where it's like this was my couch co-op like finest memory or one of my fondest memories?
I think my favorite story is a story that I wasn't personally involved in. Even it's really funny. It's from our WB days.
Okay.
So like one of the big inspirations for the for our game is a game called Overcooked, where
Yeah.
it's kind of like the chaotic kitchen um, type of cooperative chaos. And we had a coworker named Julie. She's from Montreal, and so speaks French. And so like in the moment of pure chaos where like she was getting so stressed out, she started yelling at us about like somebody go get the champs. And champs being champignons, which are mushrooms in French. Except nobody else in the room understood French. I did understand, but I wasn't involved in that game, so I just heard the yelling. And then everyone was like, "We don't know what those are." And the kind of like the stressful moments like making someone forcefully revert back to their native tongue, I thought was like such incredible moments that you can really only get in that in that co-op, in that couch co-op moment where you like turn around and you stare at that person. You're like, what are you talking about right now?
Yeah, like there's you strike lightning in a bottle almost in moments like that, right?
Absolutely.
So that kind of want to make me segue into like when you catch like you want to, while it is lightning in a bottle, but there is something that you're chasing. There's like an essence of something, and I imagine for you two, those present design opportunities, but also there's challenges, that come with that, right?
Absolutely.
When you go through that for the process of this game, like how do you what has been some of the biggest hurdles or design challenges that you've navigated as you get this? Because there's so many elements of like chaos and fun, and I've watched a few of the gameplay footage. I'm looking forward to getting a chance to play it soon too. You said the demo's out, so I want to get the chance to play it. But like, how do you navigate the hurdles, and what have been those hurdles?
I would say like one of the biggest hurdles is just like being indie versus being kind of like working for AAA is kind of
Hmm.
feedback in general. Like when you're when you're a small team, like a lot of the time it involves just you and your whoever's working on the game playing the game together. But like it's not like you have a consistent QA team that's playing. It's not like you have like this paid kind of like like playtesting group that you can use
Right.
to get feedback from. And so like I think the feedback cycle is a little bit different than what I'm used to, and so like that causes like I think what's called what I would call friction between like kind of like my desires as a creator and kind of like what the audience wants to do, and then having kind of like the wherewithal to parse like things that people are feeling in the moment versus like this is like a long term problem that like we need to solve for
I
is
see.
like one of the challenges. So if I were to be more specific, for example, one of the things I think is really important to our game, and I've made sure that it's core in the gameplay, is um, the non-assigned roles part of things. So like one of the fantasies we're trying to capture with Soulmates is kind of like the Millennium Falcon Guardians of the Galaxy type kind of like spaceship chaos. But specifically, it's not the type of like Mass Effect-y, Star Trek-y like spaceship flying where like there's like the captain and then there's like the comms person and then there's like the engineer and the med bay doctor. Like we don't want to kind of like pigeonhole people into specific roles, and
Right.
that's one of the challenges that we have is that people very naturally, because of kind of like their familiarity with like this sci-fi background, like want to be like, oh, I'm the captain and
Yeah.
I'm like the weapons person. But like the design of the game is something that like that basically creates like more problems than you can solve just by having solo people working solo stations, and you want to go help people in moments of stress. And so
I
that's
see.
something that I think we have to make people overcome themselves without
Yeah.
being too heavy-handed about it, so they feel like they have agency.
So there's like I definitely relate to that. Anytime I play a game like this, even like with an Overcooked, as you said as an example, everyone's like, okay, your role is going to be this, your role is going to be that. But you're from what you're describing, it sounds like you're trying to actively push them against that and challenge that idea for them, and be
Yes.
like, no, you need to be doing a multitude of things, and it's not every time the one thing. It almost feels like you're trying to make them feel like, hey, you're an indie studio too. You're like, you're going to be wearing multiple hats. Is
Yeah,
that off?
I definitely like that. And like I think the really nice thing about the flexibility that this gives us is like it's not exclusive that you have to
Hmm.
do that. Like if you want to be someone that focuses on a specific thing, you definitely can. And like one of the, I think the big heartwarming things we saw when we were at PAX East and these other conventions we brought the game to is when kind of like families with small children come and play the game. Like most of the time, like the kids don't have the exact kind of agency to like want to do like multiple things and whatnot. So it becomes kind of like everyone else is
Yeah.
helping, making sure that the can is loaded and aimed in the right direction, so that the kid only thing I have to do is hit the big red button and it just blows things up, and everyone's having a good time.
Nice. And so you mentioned like families and stuff, and I've seen in several of the games lately, like there's a big emphasis on other games I've seen, like It Takes Two and Sunderfolk. Even I was recently talking to them, and it sounds like something that would hit on for you guys is getting players that aren't typically playing, like families, like kids that are like, hey, I'm new to games. Is that like, how do you navigate like just the ease of intuitive feel, ease of play, getting into the game with X? How much do you explain versus how much do you just say, just kind of figure it out? I guess is kind of what I'm saying. Like, how do you balance, or do you navigate that?
I think a lot of the times people don't give kids enough credit for like how fast they are learning. Turns out they're like
That's a
built
fair
for
point.
learning, so they're so fast at learning things. And so sometimes, like halfway through the tutorial when we brought these games to conventions, like it's the kids that are teaching the parents how to play the game.
Yeah.
So I really don't think like we need to try that hard, and especially
Okay.
because we're working with like a kind of like somewhat well-established genre where like there's a lot of genre conventions about picking things up, putting things down, interacting with things over here, and then everyone being different colors, so you can kind of like identify who's who. I think we get to rely on a lot of kind of like genre conventions for kids to kind of like mentally shorthand. Now, I think a lot of games these days tend to be a little bit on the cynic side because just of the state of the world. And so, like I think our game generally takes a little bit more positive spin, like you're not working for like a big corporation that treats you like garbage, like
Yeah.
Lethal Company, and it's just like, oh yeah, if you die, you die. And so, like I think on that front, I tend to lean a little bit in terms of the fiction of the game on like the kind of like lighthearted side of things. So I think that's kind of like what helps appeal it a little bit more to a younger audience as well.
Oh, cool. No, that's very interesting to hear. And kind of hitting on the multiple hats role, I'm curious for you two in the design team, like, do you have clearly defined, like, you handle this half of these work statements of the design or of the game development, and Simon handles the other, or is it different than that?
So we're both engineers by trade, but Simon, I will easily admit, is a much better engineer than I am. So I think when we started this whole thing, we were like, there's some hats that need to be worn. Like somebody needs to be the designer, somebody needs to be the main engineer. We kind of split those hats, down to Simon being like CTO. I'm, like technically CEO, even though I never called myself that. And then so that way, like when we have disagreements, we like have someone that has final say. So like if like he and I can't agree on a design thing, I'd be like, well, like I have that hat right now, so I'm gonna make this call, and like maybe later I'll regret it, but like at least I'll own that responsibility. And same with the engineering side, so that helps us kind of divvy our roles up. So
Okay.
on my end, I've mostly kind of stepped into more of a design and kind of like product side of things.
Interesting. Okay, and kind of going further on the development journey side of stuff, what's been the biggest surprise for you two, or for you specifically, of like going through the development of this game?
I think it's kind of um, how funny people are in general. That and let me explain that statement a little bit.
Yeah, please.
So, so kind of like one of the kind of uh, baseline experiences for this game is that I want to kind of deliver that kind of like that found family in space, like rogue agents running around and having fun together type thing. And like there's an amazing amount of that being kind of shown in a cinematic kind of quality. Like you see it in TV shows, you see it in movies, but when we kind of examined games that try to deliver that, like there really aren't any games out there that help deliver that. I think most things have you acting as kind of like the big heroes. No, you're out to save the galaxy, and we're not kind of dealing with that scale of things. Like you just have your little Soulmates agency. You're kind of out here having fun, doing odd jobs and whatnot. And when coming from that kind of like cinematic background, I'm very keen on kind of like helping tell some of these sci-fi stories that everyone knows about. Like like what is playing like the Kessel Run like and whatnot. And like there's definitely elements of that. Like there are bits of storytelling in the game, but when I've watched other people play the game, like I don't need to write that much comedy in the game because turns out people know how to make their friends laugh better than I do. And so I think like one thing I really had to learn is how to create space in the game for people to express themselves instead of like me trying to kind of like put my vision onto them of like, hey, this is funny, laugh at this. It's instead like like we recently just added the ability for people to lock onto their friends with a missile launcher, and like you don't have to do it. It doesn't really do anything besides knock your friend out. But like just by having like the kind of bits of interaction, people will create comedy all by themselves, and that's something I have to learn.
But yeah, that's that you mentioned that, and it makes me reflect back on some of my favorite moments growing up as a kid. Is like what it wasn't what the game wanted me to do, is just what can I do and what can my friends and I do. So that hits very. I think that's a through line through the ages of like what gamers want to do. And so then you're talking about watching people play. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about like that testing process. You're getting out there. I know some indie devs have spoken in different perspectives on like early access and demos and different things. What have you seen work, or why do what works and what doesn't in your experience in terms of how you get some of that play test experience and how you get this kind of word of mouth out there in an indie space?
Now, I'll be the first to say I'm no expert at this, and I think like every single indie studio out there is, like trying their hardest to kind of get noticed in this sea of attention. Like everything's fighting for attention. Ads,
Yeah.
AAA game, indie games, movies, like any type of entertainment, we're all fighting for people's attention. And so, finding the right people to kind of like come test out your game is not the easiest thing. I think like just people in general, like they love community, and so like finding pre-existing communities that like help that are kind of like tapped into the type of stuff that you're interested in is definitely super helpful. Like one of the things that we've done consistently is go to a museum out in Oakland called the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment, the MADE. and they
Yeah.
host like a monthly bring your own game kind of experience where we bring the game over there, and then people that drop by the museum get to try out a bunch of different people's games, and like there's a community of people that's like interested in trying out new experiences, and then on the other side we reach out to the kind of like existing communities of games that are similar to ours. And I reach out to the devs, I talk to them about like where they find their audience. So like just the indie space is so warm and so welcoming that like that's another thing I've learned is like just don't be afraid to reach out, because like everyone's super friendly.
That's so great to hear. I'm really glad to hear that. But and I'm also curious, like when in the vein of like what works, and you're seeing it, being live tested, or you're hearing feedback from other developers. Was there ever a point in the game's development thus far that you were just like, hey, it's clicking, like we hit what we were like, you hit that lightning moment for yourselves?
Yeah, I think so. So, like I think for the first year or so of developing this game, and we have screenshots from back then. Everything's gray box. Like you're so protective of your baby. Like you're like, oh, only I can see this. I'm not gonna show it to anyone else because it's not ready. And like once we had a little bit more art, we are like, okay, maybe it's time to start showing people. And I think the moment where it really felt like it like kind of like slid into place of like, yes, I think we know, or like we're doing a good thing here, is when we brought it to PAX. So at PAX we I think we had a pretty successful PAX where we had like a big line of people, like just like watching the gameplay and then like lining up to play the game. And then the thing that I would notice in the line is like people would like be standing in the back, and then they would notice like things about the people playing in front, and being like, oh, like that's how the mechanic works. And like so like people are prepping to like get ready to play the game. And then so like as the line started progressing, people started getting better and better at the game. I'm like, then first of all, I didn't know what was happening. I was like, why are people suddenly like just like acing everything? And it turns out it was like, learning from the back. And to me, like especially coming from a mobile background, like that is like the holy grail of design, is like you want a game that when someone else is watching, they can understand what's going on, and they're like, I can do better. And then so like for our game, when I saw people doing that, I was like, yes, like I think we have something there.
No, that's amazing to hear. And I've heard so many stories of events like PAX where that's where like something clicks or some feedback is kind of given, because like you said, so much is like just you're in a silo sometimes. But I'm wondering too, with things like PAX and just the marketing journey and then development of your debut game, are there any realities you wish folks knew about indie development that people don't, you don't see yet talked about as much, or you don't think like not everyone knows? Like, I'm just kind of curious from your insights and your perspectives, what is it about indie development that is like, hey, this good or bad, like in any which way?
Yeah, I would say like the first thing is just understanding Steam and understanding like the algorithm. Like a lot of like I think from a consumer side, because I myself have bought things on Steam for the last 20 years. It's like not like there's like behaviors I don't think about too much and I don't participate in, and it turns out it's really important. For example, wish listing on Steam is something that's really really important, and we've like ever since we started marketing the game, like we've been pushing that super super hard. But like as like a casual consumer on Steam, like most of the time I window shop a lot. I look at these games like, oh, that's cool. Maybe when it comes out, I'll try to remember it and like and then buy it when it comes around. But turns out that like that wish listing system is what kind of drives the whole ecosystem in the first place. Like when your game is trying to release or has a demo out, like having enough wish lists is what kind of like drives the visibility of your game so that people can see it, and people can kind of like come on and also wish list it, which like kind of like creates this positive feedback loop.
Interesting.
And so like one of the big Steam things I think that started becoming big and like post COVID, and like now has become kind of like the de facto really cool thing to do, is your Steam Next Fest, where everyone kind of like makes a demo. And I think even when we started working on this thing, it wasn't kind of established fact that like a demo was necessary for any particular indie game. But like now every single indie game is like, yes, we need to have a demo and make sure that people can like see it in the Next Fest. And so like like there's kind of been like rules of the game that are constantly changing, because like Steam continues to be kind of like the leading platform that people buy games off of, and then what works well on there is something that you have to play by their rules.
Yeah, your success is somewhat driven by the ecosystems of which is the most viable, right? the markets that it's, and so yeah, you mentioned the Steam Next Fest and the demos. Is that a fairly new thing to your knowledge? Like I know like in recent memories that's been advertised a lot more so, and I personally love I felt like demos were going the way of a dying a breed of like ways in which we could get access. It was always like pay for pre-order to get early access to something, but at that point it was kind of you're already invested in, and then early access properly of like, oh, this is very raw, this is alpha beta. But like demos, I'm like, oh, this is a great, like I want to play this, and I get a chance to demo it, and it's like a perfect circle of it. But like I don't know, how's that experience been, or is that changed in any way for you?
I mean, I'd say it's like a tale as old as time. Like Steam's always had like an on and off relationship with these demos ever since like like Steam Greenlight from like the 2010s or
Oh yeah.
and then that gets canceled and then something else comes in and then like now this it's like Next Fest and demos and like even when Next Fest wasn't a thing, I think people would put their demos up on like itch.io or other places for people to find. So like I think the desire has always been there, and it's nice when kind of like a big platform like acknowledges that like yeah, people have so many games to choose from today, like they're not just kind of like pulling out their wallet to like buy random of the dozen games that come out this week, because there's like 200 games coming out this week. So like how do you like kind of get further knowledge on like whether you're gonna like this thing or not? It's like going to an ice cream shop and then asking for a little sample.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will say from my own experience, the best way in which I've tried things outside my wheelhouse are when me and my friends are trying to be like, what's the next game we're all going to play together or try together? And that's how I discovered games like Peak or games akin to Soulmates and stuff, because we're browsing stuff and we're trying to find an amalgamation of like our 3 or 4 play styles or preferences. You're like, oh, you like roguelikes, I like deck builders, I like chaotic co-op, I like RPGs. And it's like, okay, what can we find you're not going to see the tent poles as much. You're going to see something a little bit of everything, or something very unique that you're like, oh, I haven't heard of this one. That's been like my personal experience. I've heard of so many other stories similar to that. But I kind of wanted to look ahead a little bit. Like, what do you, in regards to Soulmates specifically, and this, we want to encourage in the wishlist thing, we want to encourage folks by the end of this video, they should be wishlisting Soulmates. But what do you hope players take away from the game after they've demoed it, wishlisted it, and, wanted to get it whenever the game does release and get into their session?
I think one of the things that kind of like drives just overall design on this game, and that's definitely like the feeling I always want to be instilling in people. So not just from the first session, I hope that they continue to feel this after the second and third and fifth session of the game, is like the kind of like, wait, you're allowed to do that in a game kind of feeling. Like that's kind of what I think indie games does the best. Like when it comes to kind of like big production these days, I think people tend to play pretty safe. And so like indie games is kind of at the forefront of like experimental design. And one of the games I haven't mentioned in regards to Soulmates is Hades, and Hades 2 that just came out this week. And I think like Supergiant and them, they're like pushing the envelope on what it's like to tell stories in a roguelike game. And I've definitely been very inspired by them to kind of like incorporate more elements of storytelling into Soulmates. Because like working with this kind of like rich sci-fi tapestry, like there's so many stories that people are familiar with that you can kind of immerse themselves in, compared to, I don't know, like as much as I love games like Overcooked, well, now they're very, very light on story. There's Kevin the dog, there's the Onion King, and like what are you exactly doing? I don't really know, like the big spaghetti monster. So like our game definitely has like more of a narrative focus, and that's one of the things that has really kind of had like a positive response from people, is kind of like that shared storytelling moments where we have like a little bit of like a visual novel-esque thing, or choose your own adventure, where it's like, okay, oh, like like your mission is to go help retrieve someone's pet. Now you've found it, like do you choose to like sneak up on it, or do you choose to like kind of like run straight at it? And then like having kind of like a narrative that kind of responds to your choices that you make. And the big thing is that like people can vote together on the choices they want to make, and you can split the votes. Like one of the first things anyone ever tries is like, they try to split the vote like 50-50, and then we do this little roulette moment to like see who actually wins 50-50. And then like that's the kind of thing that like really elicits like, oh, you can do that, like, so like on the story side there's a little bit of that.
Okay.
And then on like the gameplay side, like that's also something that I want to encourage, where it's just like, there's lots of like idiosyncratic things I've thrown in the game because I like it, or because Simon likes it, and then like for example, of being able to blast each other with a missile launcher thing.
Yeah.
It's like is there really any reason for that to exist? No, but we're an indie studio and like we have the capability of just making fun things happen. And so like let's do that. And having that kind of like moment of surprise and moment of delight is kind of like the little bits that keep me going. And I'm sure people experience as they play our demo.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, one of my last questions I would like to ask is, for now that you're kind of in the indie space, you're coming out with your debut game soon, in your debut studio. What would, if you were to impart advice to the next person who wants to start their own studio, or that may have their own game? What advice would you give to them?
What advice would I give to them? I think my indie journey started out with a very concrete vision that I kind of followed through on, and it's what worked for me. So definitely take it with a grain of salt. But I kind of like, uh, I went like I graduated college. I was like, I want to be in games, and like one day I want to make an indie game, but I don't know enough about how to properly make a game to uh, like really feel like I'm confident making an indie game. And so what I decided to do was like find like a big studio where I could learn things from, and especially establish connections, so
Mm.
that in the future I'd be able to kind of make that. And then once I've started this studio, like I say it's mainly me and Simon, but like a lot of the people that we work with are just people that we, reach out on LinkedIn, and then like our friends or the friends of friends kind of get refer people to us. They come work for us for a month or two. Everything from our music, our sound effects, our art. It's all referrals, and so just kind of like immersing yourself into like games in general. Like it doesn't have to start from like like a big studio or whatnot, but just like finding a community that can support you. Like games is not like a solo thing for you to do. Like like there's, I think the media likes to romanticize like the solo dev that like lived in their basement for 4 years and made Stardew Valley. But like I'm sure that like the entire dev journey was filled with friends and family and loved
The
ones like
support network.
helping you like make decisions about what's fun for your game and whatnot. So like don't think about it as like a solo endeavor. Think about it as like like I have a good group of people that can help me make this game a reality.
No, that is words to definitely impart, and I appreciate you sharing that. On a lighter note, I know you two are actively working on developing this game, and again, like I said, it's available to demo now, as you said, right?
Yes.
And wishlist. What, when you're not working on the game, when you're unwinding, what's been your current like game you've been kind of, or games you've been going
I
to
mean, it's an
chill with?
absolutely ridiculous year for games. Like, like like it's like a game comes out, you're like, this is game of the year, and then another game comes out, and you're like, wait a second, and then another game comes out. So like I, like most other people, I think went down the Silksong hole a couple weeks ago. Right now, I'm in the Hades 2 hole. Prior to that, Expedition 33, Blueprints. Blueprints, I think, is the sleeper hit of the whole year.
Oh
Like
my god, that game's
it,
so good.
like a lot of the times when you're a developer, a lot like it's hard to enjoy games again because like you or it's not like you can't enjoy the games, but you enjoy it differently than when you used to just be like a straight consumer where you're like thinking about game design and then you're like, oh, how can I incorporate elements from this? But like Blueprints really like broke that barrier for me because I'm like, even if you gave me 20 years, I don't think I'd be able to make a game this intricately with like all these puzzles going on and whatnot. So like I was blown away from that game. So if you haven't tried it or heard of it, definitely go check it out.
Blueprints is still one that has, like, I look back to some of the things and I'm like, I'm racking my brain. Like, how did one, someone want me to figure this out, and two, someone put this together?
Amazing, incredible.
But no, thank you so much, Lord. I want to ask if there's any final thoughts or words you want to end things on. I wanted to give you the space to do so.
So I talk about wish listing. I talk about kind of like trying the game out. But like the point of kind of like having our game out there this early before we even release the game is so that we can gather feedback. And so we have community discords, we have social media, and so like if you have any questions or comments, you can like always just like hop into one of these channels. You can even just email me directly if you want to with feedback. Like just the other day, last week, someone told me that I had like got one of the space trivia in the game wrong, where I had said like, oh, the first ever man-made like object to land on another planet was like the Pathfinder robot, and then they're like, no, it's actually like this robot that landed on Venus, made by the USSR back in
Oh,
the day. And I was like, oh, okay, then let me go and immediately fix that. So like anything from bugs to like like, oh, I wish you could do this. Like we're always listening. So come in and like just come chat with me, and I'll definitely consider it for the game, if not immediately put it in.
nice. It's good to hear when devs are listening, and always like, it's a conversation. So thank you so much, Loren. I appreciate your time. And that's been our interview today with Loren from Daruma Games, co-founder. And I wish you and Simon the best of luck in developing this. And I'm excited to see this come out when it does. Thank you again, Loren. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, everyone.